Today we are debating from the minds and works of two of the greatest thinkers of the modern age. At stake is a question we all wrestle with. Are we really in control of our lives? Or are we secretly sabotaging ourselves at every step? This is free will versus self-sabotage, existentialism versus psychoanalysis, Sartre versus Freud, two voices, one truth. Let's begin.
Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. I am Jean-Paul Sartre, and I believe we are radically free, even when we pretend we are not. Your habits? Your excuses? Your sabotage? That's not fate. That's fear in disguise.
The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. I am Sigmund Freud, and I say you are not who you think you are. Beneath your choices lie instincts, traumas, and drives, forces you do not control, but which control you.
Let's start with the foundation. What does it mean to be in control of your life?
Control. This is the fundamental question that defines our very existence. Many believe control is something external, something to be seized or lost, depending on circumstances. But I tell you, control is always present. Even in the darkest prisons, even beneath the heaviest chains, control remains, because control is the act of choosing. Take Mandela, for example. Locked away for nearly 3 decades, robbed of his freedom by others, yet he did not surrender his essence. In that cell, he exercised the most profound freedom, the freedom to decide who he was. He chose to be a symbol of resistance and hope. As I see it, this is what freedom truly means. Not freedom from conditions, but freedom within conditions. You see, we are not born with a fixed identity. We are what we do. Our choices, our actions, these define us, moment by moment. Existence precedes essence. This is not an abstract slogan, but a lived reality. Malala Yousafzai, a girl confronting death threats and violence, chose to stand firm for education. In doing so, she exercised control over her own life and identity, refusing to be a victim of circumstance. Now, some say, I cannot control this situation, or it's not my fault. But these are lies we tell ourselves to escape responsibility. Blaming others or the world is a cowardly evasion. To live authentically is to accept that with freedom comes responsibility, and with responsibility comes the weight of every choice we make. As I have said before, man is condemned to be free. There is no refuge from freedom. Every moment, no matter how small, presents a choice. Even when options seem limited or life is unbearable, we still have the power to decide, to act, to claim ourselves. Control is not about having power over everything outside you, but having power over your response to what is outside. So I ask you, what is control? It is the ongoing act of choosing who you will be, refusing to surrender your identity to fate or circumstance. It is embracing the responsibility of freedom, no matter how heavy the burden. And in that, you find your true self.
Monsieur Sartre, your grand claims about freedom and choice are inspiring, almost poetic, but I must confess, they overlook a rather inconvenient truth. You speak of freedom as if we were blank slates, pure agents of choice, unaffected by the shadows of our past. But tell me, how can one exercise real control when much of what drives us lurks beneath our conscious awareness, buried in the dark recesses of childhood? You see, long before we make any deliberate choice, our minds have already been shaped by forces outside our control, forces rooted deeply in our earliest experiences. The neglect, the trauma, the patterns we absorbed as children, these leave permanent imprints on our psyche. They are not mere stories, they are the architecture of our minds. Neurology confirms this. The amygdala, that small but mighty structure in the brain, reacts and rewires itself in response to early stress and trauma. This is biology at work. Our brain changes, adapts, sometimes in ways that limit our ability to simply choose freely. You say every moment offers choice, but what if some of our choices are made through the lens of unconscious fears, anxieties, and unresolved conflicts planted long ago? Pretending these buried forces do not influence behavior is not just naive, it is dangerous. It leads to blaming the individual for struggles they did not choose, ignoring the very real chains forged in early life. True control, therefore, is not the blind assertion of freedom alone. It begins with recognizing these hidden drivers, bringing them to light, understanding them, and working through them. This is the path to genuine agency. Only when we confront the unconscious can we claim to be truly free. So, Sartre, while your vision of freedom is powerful, it must be tempered by the reality of the human mind's complexity. Without this acknowledgement, we risk mistaking illusion for control.
Why do people say they want one thing, but do the opposite?
Self-sabotage, that curious, perplexing phenomenon where we seem to stand in our own way, often reveals something deeper about the human condition. Many interpret self-sabotage as a failure, as a loss of control. But I tell you, it is quite the opposite. Even self-sabotage is an exercise of freedom. Yes, freedom, the very freedom you sometimes try to deny by blaming fate or circumstance. Why do we sabotage ourselves? Because, quite simply, we fear responsibility. Success, change, growth, they are daunting. To face them demands courage, the kind that makes us confront the unknown. So we invent distractions, excuses, rationalizations, anything to avoid the discomfort of becoming the person we might be. But here lies the paradox. Every act of avoidance, every excuse, every flight from growth is still a choice. You may choose not to choose, but that too is a choice. Freedom never abandons us, even when we try to hide from it. I have often said that man is condemned to be free, not because freedom is a burden, but because it is inescapable. Even in fear, freedom whispers to us, act anyway. Growth does not come from obeying fear, but from standing up to it and moving forward despite it. Think of a person who fears success because it means greater responsibility, higher expectations, and the possibility of failure. That person may procrastinate or undermine their efforts. Yet in that moment, they exercise control. They are choosing fear over progress. The moment they acknowledge this, they reclaim their freedom and can break the cycle. To grow, to truly become ourselves, we must face the fear head-on. We must embrace freedom in all its terrifying, exhilarating weight. Only then do we move beyond self-sabotage, beyond excuses, and begin the authentic journey towards self-creation. So, ask yourself, when you hold yourself back, who is really in control? Is it fear, or is it you?
Sartre, your insistence that self-sabotage is simply a choice to avoid responsibility sounds noble, but it brushes over the more unsettling truths that dwell beneath our conscious minds. You speak as if we are always fully aware of our choices, as if fear is something we can just stare down and say, I choose to act anyway. But what if I told you much of our self-sabotage happens precisely because we don't realize what we are truly afraid of? The mind is a master of deception. It crafts safer failures, small defeats, to protect us from far greater emotional pain that we cannot consciously face. We sabotage not because we want to shirk responsibility, but because unconscious fears, often rooted in childhood wounds, pull the strings behind the scenes. The fear is not just fear of change, it is a fear of losing a fragile sense of self or of being exposed to harsh judgment and rejection. Imagine a person who fears success, not because they dislike achievement, but because deep down, success threatens the identity they have built to survive past traumas. That success could expose vulnerabilities, strip away protective layers formed in childhood neglect or trauma. This is not a simple matter of choosing courage, it is a silent battle with invisible forces. Until these fears are brought to light, until we peer into the darkest corners of our psyche, they continue to win. Silently, relentlessly. Pretending self-sabotage is just a conscious failure to act is to deny the profound complexity of the human mind. It's like blaming a ship captain for a wreck without knowing there was a storm beneath the waves, unseen but powerful enough to steer the course. So, Sartre, your beautiful vision of freedom overlooks the fact that many of our choices are not fully conscious, not fully free. The real work, the painful work, begins when we face those hidden fears, those buried scars. Only then can we hope to stop the cycle of self-sabotage and find a freedom that is more than just a hopeful ideal.
Can we blame parents, trauma, or society for our self-sabotage?
Freud insists that much of what governs our behavior lies hidden deep within the unconscious, shaped by childhood wounds and trauma beyond our control. He argues that these forces silently manipulate our choices, making true freedom a distant ideal. But I must ask, if we allow ourselves to become defined by the past, what remains of our humanity? When do we stop becoming who we are now and start merely repeating the scripts written for us long ago? Is it not a dangerous surrender to claim, I am this way because of my parents, because of my traumas, because of society, as if we are mere products of forces beyond our reach? If we accept this, do we not risk becoming prisoners of our histories rather than authors of our futures? I do not deny that the past influences the options available to us. Our circumstances undeniably shape the field in which our freedom operates. Yet, can circumstance ever fully determine identity? Can we not, even within the tightest constraints, redefine ourselves moment by moment? If Viktor Frankl could find meaning in the darkest abyss of human suffering, refusing to let his external reality extinguish his inner freedom, what does this tell us about the true nature of control? It tells us that identity is not a fixed entity imposed from without, but a project that each of us continually undertakes. To allow external forces to claim ownership over who we are is to live in bad faith, a self-deception that denies the fundamental truth of human freedom. Consider this. If your past is so powerful that it predetermines your actions, then what becomes of responsibility? Can you be held accountable for your choices? Or are you simply an actor following a script written long before you entered the stage? Responsibility is not a punishment. It is the very condition of our existence. It is the awareness that at every moment, no matter how constrained, you have the freedom and the obligation to choose who you will become. The past is a weight, yes, but it need not be a cage. How do we transform that weight into fuel for our becoming rather than chains that bind us? It is not denial of the past to refuse to be defined by it. Rather, it is an embrace of the present moment's power, the power to transcend circumstance and assert our freedom anew. Each decision, each act, is an opportunity to reshape our identity, to affirm our humanity in the face of whatever forces seek to diminish it. So, when confronted with the question, can we blame parents, trauma, or society for our self-sabotage? The answer lies not in absolving ourselves of responsibility, but in acknowledging that while these influences exist, they do not dictate our being. The question we must ask ourselves is this: will we accept the freedom that responsibility demands, or will we retreat into excuses and shadows, forever hiding from the truth that we are, always, the creators of ourselves?
Sartre, you exhort us to embrace freedom and responsibility as if these were simple gifts we could claim at any moment. Yet I urge you to consider, how can freedom truly be exercised if the very foundation of the self, the mind, is molded by forces far beyond conscious choice? From the earliest days of life, our experiences leave indelible marks upon us. These are not superficial memories, but deep psychological imprints that shape the unconscious patterns guiding much of our adult behavior. Trauma, neglect, repeated patterns learned in childhood, these forge the lens through which we see the world, the framework in which our decisions unfold. The influence of early experience is not mere theory. It is tangible in the very biology of the brain. The amygdala, for example, is physically altered by early stress and trauma. This small structure governs emotional responses, especially fear and anxiety, and once shaped by trauma, it sensitizes the individual to threats that may no longer be present. It triggers reactions that feel immediate and overwhelming, yet are rooted in past dangers long since past. This biological reality means that many of the fears and impulses driving behavior are outside the realm of conscious control. When someone sabotages their own success, it may not be a simple matter of fear of responsibility or an act of bad faith, as you suggest. It may be the unconscious mind protecting itself from a deeper emotional pain, a pain so severe that failure is the safer option. Pretending these influences don't affect behavior, that we can simply choose to be free in defiance of them, is not courage. It is delusion. This denial can be dangerous, leading to harsh self-judgment and misunderstanding of human complexity. True freedom, therefore, does not begin with a single act of will. It begins with recognition of the unconscious forces at play, the wounds we carry beneath our awareness. Only by bringing these buried fears and conflicts to light can we hope to understand the real nature of our self-sabotage. This is a slow and arduous process, often fraught with pain and discomfort. It requires honesty, introspection, and sometimes the help of others. But it is through this struggle that we begin to reclaim agency over our choices, disentangling the threads of past trauma from present behavior. Responsibility, then, is not simply the choice to act freely in any moment. It is the ongoing commitment to uncover and work through the hidden forces that constrain us. It is the recognition that freedom lives within a psychological landscape shaped by both biology and experience. So, Sartre, while your call to embrace freedom is vital and necessary, it must be grounded in an understanding of human psychology's depth and complexity. Freedom is not the simple declaration you envision. It is a hard-won achievement born of insight into the unconscious and the courage to face its truths. Until we engage fully with these inner forces, the past will continue to exert its silent dominion. Ignoring this reality risks mistaking illusion for freedom, a freedom that exists only in theory, not in lived experience. This deeper acknowledgement does not diminish the value of freedom, it enriches it by rooting it in the real conditions of human life. To truly be free, we must first understand what binds us.
So what's the path forward? How do we escape the cycle?
Change is not a sudden revelation or a miracle that strikes without warning. It is a process, a construction, a deliberate act. Imagine building a city, brick by brick, street by street. No one expects a grand metropolis to appear overnight. It grows slowly, patiently, through countless small decisions. In the same way, our transformation begins not with certainty or confidence, but with action, however small, however imperfect. Ask yourself, when do we truly become ourselves? Is it only when we feel ready, fully formed and secure? Or is it, in fact, in the very act of doing, of choosing and moving forward, that identity is forged? We are not defined by some fixed essence waiting inside us. We are the sum of what we choose to do, moment by moment. Do you wait for confidence to appear before taking a step? If so, consider this. Confidence is not the cause of action, it is the result. The movement, the act itself, births confidence. The paradox is that we often wait to be free before acting, but freedom is born in the act of choosing, even when fear whispers otherwise. What if the fear never fully disappears? What then? The answer is simple, yet profound: act anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to move forward despite it. Each choice, each small step, is a declaration of freedom and responsibility. It is an affirmation that we will not be bound by circumstance, habit, or past failure. This leads us to an essential question. How do we overcome the inertia of self-sabotage? How do we break the cycle of avoidance and fear? The answer lies in repetition. Freedom is not a one-time event. It is earned through the repeated assumption of responsibility. Each time you choose to act, to engage, to face discomfort rather than flee it, you lay another brick in the foundation of your future self. Consider this. What future do you want to build? Who do you want to become? These are not abstract questions but urgent ones. Because with every hesitation, every excuse, the city of your potential remains unfinished, a blueprint unbuilt. Transformation is uncomfortable. It requires wrestling with doubt and resisting the easy escape of inaction. But it is also deeply liberating. Each act of responsibility is a step out of the shadows and into the light of self-creation. So, the path forward is clear yet challenging. Do not wait. Do not seek permission from fear or uncertainty. Start where you are, with what you have. Act, even imperfectly, and let the act itself create the confidence and freedom you desire. Ask yourself now, what small action can I take today that affirms my freedom? How can I begin building the city of my becoming, one choice at a time? Remember, freedom is not given, it is built. And it is built through your hands, through your choices, in this very moment.
You want change, real, lasting transformation. But before we speak of the future, we must understand the terrain we are standing on. You cannot simply leap into a new self by force of will alone. Not when the very soil beneath your feet, the unconscious, holds roots that twist backward into childhood, into trauma, into fear you haven't yet named. So the first step, paradoxically, is not action. It is observation. Begin by watching yourself, not with judgment, but with honest curiosity. How do you respond when faced with pressure, with intimacy, with failure? What do you do when things begin to go too well? Do you pull back? Do you provoke collapse? Do you delay, sabotage, numb yourself with distractions? These patterns are not random. They are messages, echoes of an earlier version of you trying to stay safe. The unconscious mind is not our enemy. It is a protector built in pain. When you self-sabotage, you are not being weak or lazy. You are obeying an emotional logic written long ago. A child who learned that love came with conditions, or that visibility brought punishment, or that chaos was normal. Such a child grows into an adult who fears success, who dreads calm, who undermines joy the moment it arrives. So I ask, can you track these moments in yourself? Can you notice the patterns, not to condemn them, but to understand them? We must name the fear. For when the fear remains nameless, it becomes a shadow with total power. But when you name it, I sabotage success because I fear rejection, or I push people away because closeness once meant pain, you begin to take your power back. This is the work to bring the unconscious into consciousness. And yes, it takes time. Often it takes therapy, reflection, silence. It requires digging, not to romanticize the past, but to understand how it is still living inside you. How it is speaking through your choices, your relationships, your compulsions. You cannot build lasting change on top of unexamined fear. You can try to act your way out of pain, to choose freedom, as Sartre urges, but if the wound beneath remains infected, it will resurface. Action without insight risks becoming another disguise. So, what is the real path forward? It begins with deep awareness, with tracing the lines of your behavior back to their emotional origins, with sitting quietly in the presence of your inner life, listening for the voice you've spent years drowning out. The child's voice, the anxious voice, the protective voice. Because here's the truth, until you meet those parts of yourself, you are not truly free. You are a marionette with strings pulled by memories, unmet needs, and silent shame. But once you see the strings, once you feel the reasons behind your reflexes, you can start to cut them. Slowly, thoughtfully, gently. And only then, only when your unconscious becomes conscious, can your choices become truly yours. That is where change begins, not in bold declarations, but in quiet, honest confrontation with what you've carried in silence for too long.
So you've just heard from two of the greatest philosophical minds to ever wrestle with the question of control. Jean-Paul Sartre, champion of radical freedom, and Sigmund Freud, master of the unconscious. One says, you are what you do, act anyway, even in fear. The other says, you are shaped by hidden forces, see them clearly before they shape you again. And maybe they're both right. So now the question isn't just theoretical. Are you steering the car, or simply explaining the crash after it happens? Try this tonight. List one habit you want to stop, and one you want to start. Don't filter your mind. What excuse or fear shows up first? Set a timer, just 5 minutes. Take the smallest physical step toward change. Then ask, what did your fear predict? What actually happened? Repeat, again and again, because progress isn't made in grand speeches. It's made in 5 quiet minutes that nobody applauds, except your future self. So Team Sartre, or Team Freud, or maybe a bit of both, tell us in the comments. Seriously, we want to know how you see it. And hey, if you caught yourself doom scrolling before you landed on this video, maybe that wasn't an accident. Maybe your unconscious brought you here. And your next click, that can be your first conscious move toward change. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who keeps getting in their own way. We'll see you in the next debate.